the fear is that we will lose critical thinking.
Yeah.
And I disagree because the way I use AI is to counter my thinking
Hmm.
all the time. I ask AI to push back on an idea or a solution or a strategy. And I'll say, please don't simply agree with me because
Hmm. Hmm.
ChatGPT in particular has a
Yes.
tendency.
Do you want to know the secret to success? Welcome to rulesforsuccess.com, a platform that unites the accomplished and the ambitious. We're here to arm you with the invaluable knowledge of individuals who have paved their own path to success. And now let's get into the show with dynamic host Joseph Varghese.
Hi, everyone. Joseph Varghese here, and welcome to our podcast interview. We have Sara Canaday here today. Excited to connect with her. She's a leadership coach, consultant, expert, based in Austin, Texas. And I'm excited to have her today on our podcast. Um, you want to absolutely check into Sarah's background. She's authored 3 books, including a recent one, Leadership Unleashed. It's right behind her. Sara, how are you today?
I'm great. How are you doing?
I'm great. Fantastic. I'm excited about having you. I know you're a coach, you lead executives, Fortune 500. You're in that world for some time, and then you shifted, and now you're working with leaders, and um, it's an interesting space where things are currently with the world and AI and much more. So we're going to tap into all of this for our audience. For anyone listening, you can tap into this interview at rulesforsuccess.com. We'll have the transcript, the summary. We'll have bite-sized nuggets out of it too that we'll extract. We have a separate podcast called momentumtips.com, so you can tap into that. We'll also have Sara's contact on this interview too. Once again, rulesforsuccess.com. All right, so I'm excited today. I know I had one of your colleagues, Todd, on this interview on a platform recently mentioned that. Um, so you climbed the corporate ladder. You're in operations and executive roles. You got your MBA, and you built your speaking business. How's the journey been over the years? Like, it's this is what you're doing is so needed in organizations, but how has this journey been for you?
Oh, the journey's been a learning journey. It's been a fun ride. Like most journeys, there have been ups and there have been downs,
Mm,
right? But all in all, I feel very blessed that I was able to
mm,
transition away from corporate and move into doing what I love full time. Because there
yeah,
were aspects of my job as a corporate leader that I loved. And as you can imagine, there were
yeah.
aspects that I didn't. And I feel very fortunate to say these days that almost every aspect of what I do now, I thoroughly enjoy. It's what I want to be doing.
What do you enjoy about coaching leaders and organizations on this side now?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that having been there,
Mm,
I get it. I get the playing field. I feel like I can relate, and more importantly, that the leaders I coach can relate to me, right? That I am not coming from some theoretical viewpoint of books I've read and you know, best practices that don't bear out in the real world.
mm,
And I really do want to help people because I think leaders right now are
mm.
facing insurmountable pressure
Yeah,
um, and expectations that I think are unrealistic, frankly.
yeah, got it. Especially in the age of AI, right?
Right.
And there's also a lot of disruption happening in the space currently with roles being eliminated, organizations simplifying. I'm present to that. We teach AI at times. I also lead communities for entrepreneurs who are many of them former 500, Fortune 500 reps, executive leaders on the other side of that now. And it's very fascinating what's happening at this stage. It's kind of like when the internet was back, 30 years ago when internet became popularized. What's the biggest outdated leadership rule that's like holding most high achievers back? What would you say?
Well, one that I talk about a lot because it's a work in progress for me
Hmm,
is that many of us as leaders are fixers,
hmm,
right? That's what we're known for. We are also known to take action
hmm,
and have been taught that a bias for action is the end all be all,
hmm,
right?
hmm,
Now, if I'm in the military, I want my colleague to have a bias for action,
hmm,
right? I want my teammate, my leader, to be wired that way. And I do think it serves us at work, but I think as we have gotten more complex, that has actually gotten in our way.
Yeah.
We tend to keep ourselves on a treadmill and we go, go, go. We're running from meeting to meeting. I always talk about, when's the last time you were in a meeting and a brilliant idea came to
Mm,
you,
mm,
and you wrote it down, you circled it, you left the meeting, but then you went back to starting, firefighting and
yeah.
jumping on another call, right? And that idea never saw the light of day.
Yeah.
Or you've attended a lot of meetings, and if you really had the time to sit back and marinate on what was said, you might see a red thread that is calling to you as a leader. But again, you're so distracted from this constant action
Mm,
that those things don't get a chance to surface, right?
yes.
And it happens to me.
Yes.
I sense it and I see it with myself all the time. If I had just let something play out, it could have worked out. But of
Yes.
course, I tried to fix it too soon. Or, I tell a story of being at a coffee shop and waiting on a response for a keynote draft that I sent to a colleague of mine for their review. And I got in the car, and the coffee house is literally 5 minutes away. But I could not wait to sit in my office. And so I picked up the phone and I looked at the email. Well, all it showed was the first line. And it said something like, I can't read this anymore, or I can't continue to concentrate on this right
Mm,
now.
mm,
And I was taken aback. Oh my gosh, she hates my keynote, right?
right.
And I think I even texted something like, oh my God, I missed the mark that much or
Mm,
something. She picked up the phone and called me and said, did you bother to read the rest of the email? I mean, it's a silly example,
yeah.
but it drives my point home.
Yes.
We're in that mode constantly.
So there's no presence. It's always constant action and doing, doing, doing. And I think you alluded to maybe a lack of like critical thinking because when you're in a meeting and an idea comes up and being present to that like idea that could be like the top 10% of what will move the things forward. We're constantly in action mode,
That's right.
focusing on like, maybe KPIs and numbers and things of that sort without necessarily choosing the thing that would actually forward the mission, the group, the culture, the community, whatever's more vital, right? Mission oriented forward. Is that what you would say?
Absolutely.
Yeah. What would you recommend as far as taking pauses and breaks? Like, how do people engage? Like, I have my ideas because we engage with high-level entrepreneurs, and I realize from that world of the corporate world, I used to work at Pfizer, GE Capital, like many years ago. It was all meetings, and those meetings were not constructive, and it was meetings all the time, and things would move at a snail's pace because of certain reasons. What do you recommend for leaders and executives of these organizations to how do they pause? How do they reflect? How do they engage in a way that still moves the mission forward for their team?
Yeah. I mean, I think that um, one of the things is, I look at a tool as simple as Outlook that
Hmm,
has a new feature that I say new, it's probably
hmm,
2 years old. A lot of people don't use it. It's called Insight,
hmm,
right? It's basically where you can make an unbreakable appointment with yourself. You,
hmm,
you can block your calendar for focus time,
hmm,
and people don't use it often
hmm,
enough,
hmm.
right? And it sounds so simple, but there is something about the act of separating and signaling to yourself
Yeah.
a calendar spot for focus time.
Hmm,
Similarly, I tell leaders for focus time, try to change your environment.
hmm,
Get out of the office,
hmm,
go to a coffee shop,
hmm.
go take a walk, go do something because a different scenery tends to help your brain think
Yeah.
differently,
Yes.
right? And I also say, instead of thinking that you got to do this, I hear people say, take a retreat, a thinking retreat for a day or two. It doesn't have to be that.
Hmm,
These can be micro I call them mental time ins
Mm, mm,
because your brain is actually doing a lot when you're giving it space to think,
yeah.
right? Now, in preparation for that space, a lot of times I tell leaders, look at your notes, look at things that you keep pushing aside, the do later folder,
Mm,
even if it's something that's an application or AI that you've been meaning to be able to, play around with, get in the sandbox. Is there something there that's going to help either you or your team move forward or get traction, right?
yeah.
So, it's almost like a mindset shift first, that
Yes.
the idea of setting aside time is productive,
Yes.
right? That's
Yes.
why I don't call it a mental timeout.
Yes.
That to me is, it has negative connotations. It means that we're just gonna, kind
I feel
of doom scroll.
I feel like some organizations have, at least here in New York City where I live, they're aware of it. They have meditation rooms. They have even my gym has a meditation room of sorts that these things didn't exist years ago. So I feel there's some progress with that, and yet people are still wired to like be performers, especially in this age of AI where they're concerned that AI will outperform them. So they have to perform more or faster in order to get better results versus actually leveraging the tools that'll enhance how they show up. Um, so I'd like to talk about AI for a bit. So we'll talk about that very shortly. Um, so you mentioned just now taking breaks, coffee shops getting out of the environment, shifting proximity. Um, Anything else that they can take on and without taking a day off, without doing a retreat, like you mentioned, anything else as far as their team, maybe like a team exercise that'll have them disengage so they can better prioritize.
Yeah, I mean, what's interesting is I do something that's probably very counterintuitive. The minute I say take a mental time in,
Hmm.
I follow that up when I do keynotes with here are some things you can do in that mental time in. And
Yeah.
to some people to be, they're kind of looking at me like, wait a minute, aren't those kind of counter to what you're trying to point out? Well, no, because I know how we're wired.
Yes.
And so I don't want people leaving the room thinking, this lady doesn't get it. She wants me to just go take a walk and let my brain just escape and go somewhere.
Yeah.
I think we can still be creative and get our thinking juices going,
Hmm.
even if we're given some ideas of what to do with that time. One I
Hmm.
already mentioned, right? Review, just sit down and review, even if you have to look at your calendar. What meetings have I been in this week? Let me review my notes. Was there anything that came up that I've just brushed over? Is there a way I want to contribute at our next meeting based on what I heard here?
Hmm.
Because when I was there the first time, all I could think about was my next meeting.
Hmm.
Again, I talked about, looking at your to-do folder,
Hmm.
right? Because we never get to those. That's another idea.
Hmm.
One other idea I give people is use that time to pick up the phone and call a colleague
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
help them, or have them help you either not role play so much, but get reaction to a conversation, a difficult conversation you need to have,
Hmm.
and get them to kind of hear you out and tell them what they think the person, how they might react, what some landmines are, or, you know, tell them a problem you're wrestling with
Yeah.
and use them as a peer advisor, right?
Love that.
Um, you could use that time to take some of your most vital metrics, goals, or objectives and figure out with the help of AI, how do I come up with an analogy or a story to bring this to life with my team? How do I take reports that I deliver every single month with the same bar charts and graphs with numbers updated and present them a different way? I'm not getting fresh ideas from my team. Well, no wonder you keep presenting the same data
Right.
sets,
Yes.
same bar charts and graphs, maybe updated
Hmm.
numbers, and people are desensitized,
Hmm.
right? So those are all things that we just don't give
Hmm.
ourselves the luxury of
Hmm.
doing.
Hmm.
And they sound like, yeah,
Hmm.
nice to haves, but they can give you a tremendous traction.
And I love how you framed the idea of having conversations, whether it's talking to a peer advisor or even talking to AI, having a conversation. And some people are scared of AI, right? So there's that. I leverage AI quite a bit. Even before this conversation, I went back and forth, having like a mock conversation with my AI just to make sure that I covered bases. I got your background ba down and aspects of things that are vital to you, important to you, your book you just launched. And that's useful. That's useful if you're able to have that conversations. Conversations go a long way, and they often get us out of our head. I find that when there's this idea that when you're ahead, you're dead, or things we overthink things, and that
Mhm.
overthinking of things can lead to a lot of stress, anxiety, versus speaking things out loud in a way that's, impactful and clarifying, where feedback could be very useful, right? I
Yeah, I
love it.
mean, I talk about rumination, right?
Yes.
Why can some people handle the same amount of stress, even
Mm,
if their personal life is similar and others can't? Well, I think those people do well at, I'm going to stress over this for this amount of time,
mm.
a certain amount of time, and then I'm going to move forward. And they're good at getting perspective or putting things in perspective, which is another reason you reach out to somebody
Yes.
because they can help you see things from the balcony versus the dance floor,
Yes. Oh, I
right?
love that. I love that. I love it.
Sometimes we just cannot see and get perspective unless we talk to somebody else.
Amazing. In our community success circles, we talk about the idea of play. Our tagline's dare to play bigger, play better, bigger, bolder. But play for us, the way we frame it is basically disconnecting, engaging in a different way, maybe playing in life. For example, typically I take Tuesdays off in my life as a way of disconnecting my business, being less an operator on my business, being more of an owner, a visionary. And that's helped me quite a bit. I learned that some years ago from my mentor, Michael Gerber, and then Gino Wickman years later. And I'm often curious how executives can engage in more play. In the startup world, I've done some work in that space. They often build like a billiard room or a separate room where people can play basketball of sorts, like play basketball, just to encourage teams to disengage, to play together outside of what they're doing, whether it's like a sales floor making calls or something else. Just to encourage more teamwork, but also to engage in more play, more camaraderie, more getting out of the head. And people would often we found that people would come back to the dance floor or the court, however you frame it, um, with more respect and clarity and joy with the work they're doing because they took those little breaks. What are your thoughts about play and how do executives and leaders in Fortune 500 organizations, how can they engage in play? Or is there another word you use for play perhaps that you see?
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's the personal and there's the professional. And as somebody who can attest to this,
Hmm,
I think even committing to more play in your personal life
hmm,
will serve you better as an entrepreneur or an executive.
hmm.
Hard stop, right? And
Yeah.
then when I think of play among and within an executive team, to
Hmm,
me, that's different. That's a bonding experience. It's a
hmm,
team building experience. Again, as you said, it kind of, um, nurtures the appreciation
hmm,
for each other.
hmm,
And we get to sort of see each other differently,
hmm.
right? So maybe we understand each other better.
Yes.
So, to me, those are sort of two different things.
Yeah.
And I think of things that, my husband has done. He's in a technology company and they've done some really interesting things. Being that I'm
Hmm,
here in Austin, Texas, they've gone to, maybe Lucchese boots or Tacovas. Our
hmm,
Tacovas is a really neat boot shop that has a coffee bar and a whiskey bar, and you can
hmm.
rent it out at night and you can do, some individual branding of your boots if you want to. And they have hats and you can get a
Love that.
custom hat done or, roll cigars or, whatever lights your
Yes.
fancy. Uh, I've seen executives cook together with a
Hmm,
personal chef,
hmm.
those sorts of things. Um, but I think it's like anything else. Before you can transform an organization, you've got to do some transforming yourself.
Yes.
And I
Yes.
say this because that's another big work in progress for me. is
Yes.
being more playful.
Incredible. Yeah, I think it's vital for all of us to avoid burnout. And I know burnout is a topic of some of the articles you've written, including one of the articles you wrote called Leaders Reset, probably in your book too. Anything else you want to cover about burnout, avoiding burnout?
Well, I mean, it's interesting that the first place my mind goes is, well, if companies and executives would just understand that leaders aren't burnt out because they lack
Hmm,
grit,
hmm,
or commitment.
hmm.
They're burnt out because their capacity is limited.
Yeah,
And we seem to forget that, right?
yeah.
Um, just this morning, for example,
Hmm,
Harvard Business Review in their daily alert talked about leaders understanding their teams, what was it, their circadian rhythms,
hmm, hmm,
and being able to understand that so that they deliver work or have meetings at
hmm,
the peak times of their teams, overlapping circadian rhythms. And
hmm,
I got to tell you, I just said to myself, you got to be kidding me.
hmm, hmm,
Again?
hmm, hmm.
I
Interesting.
mean, leaders have to understand and offer work for neurodivergent individuals. They've got to be
Yes,
trauma informed.
yes,
They've got to facilitate political, social unrest discussions.
yeah.
I mean, it's endless.
It goes
And,
beyond just sleep. It goes into a lot of other factors that can be affecting
you
the
know,
individual. Yes,
it's just, it's ridiculous, I think. I
yes.
mean, leaders are humans. They do not walk on water.
Yes. What do you think about personality traits? So, I mean, there's so many tests, DISC,
Yeah.
Colby, Myers-Briggs, Enneagram. I've done a lot of them.
Yeah.
Recognizing we all have our own unique zone of genius, ways we engage the world. How does it help leaders to understand where their team members are across the different strengths finder and things of that sort of their
Yeah.
team members?
Yeah, I mean, I think Strengths Finders is a good one because, for me, when I talk about delegating, for example, I think there's so many factors at play. Leaders, because they don't have time to delegate to the person they know can get it done.
Hmm.
And next thing you know, we've taxed a high potential and they're no longer a satisfied high
Yeah.
potential. We've overtaxed them. So understanding an individual's strengths, where they want to grow, um, how they best learn, to me, those are more important than maybe their personality quirks.
Hmm.
Because let's face it, a lot of those psychometric tests, they're they're not a label for somebody all the time,
Hmm. Hmm.
right? I mean, we ebb and flow in and out of
Yes.
our
Yes.
personalities.
Yes.
Typically, it's when we're under stress that a lot of those psychometrics labels bubble up.
Hmm.
And yes, that can be helpful. But again, when you're managing, which by the way, in the past year, teams of up to 20 people, right?
Hmm.
I mean, I'm here in Austin. Dell is a
Hmm.
client of
Hmm.
mine.
Hmm.
In some of their organizations, they've gone from a span of control of 10 to 20 people,
Wow.
right?
Hmm.
So to expect a leader to sort of tap into the Myers-Briggs and
Hmm.
the Hogans of every 20, it's
Would
just
be
not possible,
It's not possible, right? Yeah.
right? And so I'd rather approach it from what is it that most resonates with people
Hmm.
when you communicate as a leader?
Hmm.
What is it that most resonates with people when you want to enroll them in where you're going?
Hmm.
Right?
Hmm.
Those are the things that I would prefer to focus on than people's individual sort
Yeah.
of personality traits.
What are some other aspects of your book, Leadership Unleashed, you have behind you that you cover along these organizations, these small groups, larger groups, and such?
Yeah. Yeah. So there are basically eight counterintuitive practices, right? Um, and hence the subtitle is Defy Conventional Wisdom, because a
Hmm.
lot of what many of us grew up on as
Hmm.
being successful leadership principles no longer hold. Or they do, but we have to know when to use them and when to defy them,
Hmm.
right? I talked about the bias for action being one of them. One of the others that is not so conventional is our obsession with data,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
I think we have an over obsession with data. And don't get me wrong, I'm a data person. I love it. I think it is now baked into the DNA of most organizations. It is allowed us to do amazing things.
Mm.
But what happens is when we over rely on data,
Mm.
and I think this happened even more so during COVID because we weren't getting up and out of our offices as leaders. We weren't walking around.
Mm.
We weren't walking around and talking to customers.
Mm.
So we took the data at face value.
Mm.
And much of the time, we don't get to understand the why behind the data.
Mm.
Why did somebody give us a net promoter score of X or Y?
Mm.
Why
Mm.
did somebody rank us an 8 or a 9 out of 10?
Mm.
I want to be able to do more of that, or a 3 so that we can avoid doing that, right?
Mm. Mm.
So that chapter is really about sort of balancing. I have stories in there of times when I was in corporate and, people over indexed on the data and it got them in trouble. There's a big story about Nokia
Mm.
over indexing on data. We all know what happened to Nokia.
Mm. Mm.
So yeah, I mean, that's probably one other, probably very present day chapter that gets a lot of attention.
How about AI? So let's talk about that. I know you're using
Mm.
AI. You've integrated AI into part of your process around leadership and influence. But let's talk about what are some of the challenges of AI? So I'm passionate about AI. We teach it to, but we also teach people how to be responsible with it. And I always challenge people to take breaks, to disconnect, and to disengage, and to take 1 to 2 days off a week to be away from tech, so that they can rebuild their prefrontal cortex, their better choices, better prioritizations, and so forth. That's how I look at AI. And I have colleagues, friends who are immersed in it all day, all week long, um, doing their best to catch up and to be ahead of the curve. I'm sure a lot of organizations are also reflecting on this now because of the nature of disruption. There's a lot of disruption that's happening. People are even saying 30 to 40% of the workforce across different sectors and industries that are being disrupted. What are your thoughts about AI in this space, and how can leaders be more prepared, proactive in this age of
Yeah.
AI?
Yeah. Oh my gosh, you said so much there that resonated with me. First of all, I'm a fan. I
Hmm.
will say that. I am not one of these people that's a naysayer. I can understand people's hesitancy about how AI is
Hmm.
impacting jobs, but I am a firm believer that it will create new jobs.
Yeah.
There may be a gap that we got to wrestle with in between, that, none of us want. I don't want to see anybody lose their job.
Hmm.
But I do think it's a phenomenal thing. And what's interesting is I am building and have built an AI platform for leaders specifically.
Hmm. Hmm.
And I don't see it as a way for leaders to outperform their colleague,
Hmm.
right? Or to get more done.
Hmm.
I mentioned earlier that we expect so much of leaders, and I talk to so many leaders every day who cannot catch their breath.
Hmm.
They are disillusioned by the role.
Hmm.
They feel like walking to-do lists,
Hmm.
right? So, in my mind, even though this platform is going to give them incredible traction,
Hmm.
to me, it's a way to keep up with their job.
Hmm.
It's also a way to do more of the things that they want to do as a
Hmm.
leader, right?
Hmm.
They want to be more involved in the evolution of the company
Yeah.
or of at least their department division. They want to be part of the growth of their employees. And those are two things that they're not getting to do right now.
Right. Right.
So
Yes.
I see AI and specifically the platform I've built as a way to give them traction, but also I've embedded my leadership practices in the system. So for example, I keep talking about the way things are communicated. In my day as a VP, I went to the executive meeting, I took notes. I was supposed to cascade that information down to my team.
Yeah.
And in fact, I had to turn in my meeting notes. I had an executive assistant who would take minutes. This is back in the day.
Yep.
And I would have to turn in my notes to make sure that I had cascaded. That did nothing for my team.
Right.
Cascading is just repeating.
Right.
What I want leaders to do is bring the information to life in a way that connects to what they do. Right. So I have taught that for years. Leaders love it, but they also tell me, I get this. It's so time consuming to think of a story or an analogy or to really connect to what they do, to what this big goal is. Well, guess what? My system has it embedded for them. They enter their industry, their role, and what it is they're trying to communicate. And my system will give them ideas of how to launch it in a way that would resonate with their team.
So is your system like a conversational tool of sorts that they engage with?
Nope. It is not a chat bot. They do not need to understand really AI to its fullest. They can be beginners. Everything's embedded. There is no prompting and there is no chat feature. I walk them through how to execute on something they're doing. Right. And so they enter, it could be, I want to build some better KPIs. Okay. Enter what the objective is. What's the overall business objective? What are the outcomes? So I'll walk them through a couple, maybe 2 or 3 questions that they have to fill in. And then they hit a button and they get ideas.
That's great.
Now, I'm very consistent after each output, and there's 25 ways to get help that I say after every time they get the results. This is not the answer. You're the leader. You use your discernment and your judgment. These are some ideas, next steps, potential directions, but it's ultimately up to you.
That's important too. It's important to maintain agency and how we show
Absolutely.
up. Hence, sovereign self, agency, make better choices. The moment we lose that or give it to AI, we lose an aspect of ourselves too in the process. And there's some things that we can give AI access to, like we're beginning to have AI respond to emails, communications, things that are redundant communications. Like, okay, before this interview, are you prepared to have this? We'll do those things. And AI is getting smarter. So we're able to build things now where it's able to self-learn, learn on itself. It's very fascinating what's happening in this world. But agency is really, really, really critical. Being able to make decisions ourselves. And the moment we lose that ability to be at cause, to speak, to communicate what we have in mind based on this information, based on the recommendations that AI might provide, the moment we lose that, we lose our ability to be better leaders. Any thoughts about that, about as far as even building greater agency? And I know a lot of what we talked about so far about prioritization and taking time off and connecting with the team and presence. We talked about some of those things earlier are all vital, but anything else as far as in this world of AI, how do we maintain even greater agency ourselves, or executives as leaders, people you talk to, or people who are perhaps even using your app?
Yeah, well, so one of the things that I always tell people is, the fear is that we will lose critical thinking. And I disagree, because the way I use AI is to counter my thinking all the time. I ask AI to push back on an idea or a solution or a strategy. There are times where I'll ask AI, I just, this flow of this, whatever it is, here's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking this is redundant. And I'll say, please don't simply agree with me, because ChatGPT in particular has a tendency.
Yes, it does. It does.
You're absolutely right. And of course, it makes us feel great, but it doesn't solve the problem that we need to continue to sharpen our critical thinking. So it's the way you use it. And it's actually helped me be more of a critical thinker, because if you use it right, it can bring up ideas, solutions, or perspectives that you hadn't thought about before. So I think in that way, and back to, agency, and I think in
Yeah.
the way you're also using it is at the end of the day, we own the work,
Hmm.
right? And
Hmm.
so we are ultimately responsible. And I never take what AI gives me and just use it as is.
Hmm.
I'm retooling it. I'm finding errors in
Hmm.
the logic.
Hmm.
Wait, you just said this, and then this sentence said that doesn't make sense,
Yeah.
So you still have to be really diligent
And mindful. Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
about how you use it.
Really well said. Really well said around all of that. I think that's a big concern that people have. One of the top concerns people have, our members, our community have around AI, and how vital it is to maintain agency. I'd even say really having feeling. It's easy to go numb to the world when there's so much noise happening, right? And it's even prior to AI with the nature of television and commercials and just information coming our way and data, or even, I live in New York City, walking down Times Square, it's easy to go numb to the sensations of the world and lose ourselves. Now AI is potentially taking more of that away. And it's just good to ask questions, really feel into the experience being what's said or what's being shown. This is really, is this what I intended? Right. And have those conversations and bring your team aboard. And so I know that anyone watching this will get a lot of value from this conversation, especially because this is really a key thing that people are struggling with these days, even for myself too at times, because sometimes I lean on these tools a lot because I am, a technologist at heart. This is fantastic. This is great. Anything else you would offer our audience? Any other tips? Maybe even things you take on each day to start out your day, morning rituals, evening rituals to begin or ground your day. It's often a question. That's often something we appreciate the people we interview, hearing their perspectives on things they do, their
Yeah.
takes. Mhm.
This is going to sound silly, and I've I remember saying this a couple years ago, and when it left my mouth, it sounded silly, but it's the truth. I have to sort of, in order to declutter my brain, I have to declutter my surroundings.
Hmm. Hmm.
Some people aren't wired like that. But, I'm ritualistic in the morning. I make my bed and, yeah, I'm
Me
one of
too.
those that drives my husband crazy. Six
Yep.
pillows, I do the thing in the middle where I make sure they're,
Yeah.
just right. Um, you know, I try to get my exercise in the morning. I'm pretty ritualistic, but even my office, right? At my
Yeah.
home office, I want it to be neat. If I've left coffee or anything in from the snacks from the day before, I move them into the kitchen.
Love that.
It's sort of a way for me to
Hmm.
say, okay, I'm ready.
It's like defragging yourself, defragging your environment before you. Yeah,
Exactly.
I get it.
Exactly. And that works for me.
Yeah.
It's simple, but absolutely works for me. Um, back to the AI thing, I try to get out and meet people for coffee or lunch once or twice a week because otherwise, you know what happens, right? Especially with AI. I'm meeting with a colleague tomorrow, and when we got off the phone, I said, I am so proud of us. We're going to use each other as a thinking partner instead of AI for a
Love that.
change. Because
Yes.
we used to
Yeah.
do it all the time, right? But
Yes.
we've both gotten pretty good at using AI as our thinking partner. So you
Yes.
got to kind of force yourself, like
Yes.
you said, take a day or two off of AI. Otherwise, you get into this, and it's already coming out. It's already coming out about, people at work were lonely after COVID,
Yes.
hybrid work. Now it's going to get even worse because they're using AI as their working buddy and
Exactly. Yes. Yeah.
slippery
Engagement.
slope.
Yeah. Engagement is really vital. Human engagement is very vital. Stepping outside, shifting environment. You mentioned that before too. All very important. I mean, so many great things. So many great nuggets you've added today to our audience. So I really appreciate this.
Of
And
course.
I completely align with all of that. Just it's important to leverage these tools in a way where you maintain agency and you can still show up and have full presence and be a leader. It's really great. How do people connect with you? How do they learn more about you and your AI and your recent book, Leadership Unleashed, which is right behind you?
Sure. I do a lot of my communications and updates on LinkedIn. That's really where I play and
And you
communicate and
you have
engage
100
with others.
you have 102,000 followers as of this
Yes.
point, which is extraordinary. So yeah, definitely follow Sara on
I've
LinkedIn.
really focused my time and energy on that platform, and I
Wow.
find that it suits it suits
Yes,
my, wheelhouse.
of course.
Yes, I have a Facebook page, and I'll do, some posting there and Instagram. I've done some videos, but LinkedIn is really where I play the most. So anybody can feel free to connect with me, follow me, reach out. My
Yeah.
website, saracanaday.com. It's spelled just like Canada, but with a Y at the
Mm,
end.
easy.
No H on Sarah. Um, so I would love to hear from any of your listeners.
Incredible. Well, I know our audience will get a lot of value from this interview. For our audience, check out rulesforsuccess.com. Tap into the full interview, the partial interview, the AI summary if you choose to. There's a lot of value here, especially from what Sara talked about AI agency, being better leaders. Check out Sara's book too, Leadership Unleashed. The many articles she's written. I really appreciate Sara for this session today. Rulesforsuccess.com. Thank you so much, Sara.
Thank you.
That's it for today's episode of rulesforsuccess.com podcast. Join us next week for another inspiring conversation with a successful entrepreneur. Until then, remember to be bold, be courageous, and go after your dreams.